like the fact that they have him there. I think he'll be good in practice. He'll be good for some of those younger guys in helping them to prepare for a game and whatnot. And he's just also really good.
This is one of the natural and foreseeable byproducts of drafting him. He comes to town with a built-in fan base. The mouth breathers, as you call them, are in tow. Not that I called them that, but you called them that.
Yeah,
They're there.
Gabriel, who, through no fault of his own, commits one of my cardinal sins of quarterbacking, which is he's tiny. And so, I mean, he's tiny.
Joe Flacco didn't just lose the starting quarterback job, he lost it to a rookie who hadn't even played a single NFL snap. And what happened next? He stormed out of the meeting, skipped the media, and vanished from the facility. This wasn't your typical depth chart adjustment, it was a full-blown quarterback takeover, and it blindsided everyone. The Cleveland Browns just made a decision that could define their entire season or destroy it. Inside sources say this rookie didn't just win the job, he exposed the system. But why did this decision shake the entire organization from top to bottom? And how did an untested rookie light a firestorm across the league, inside the locker room, and even inside the front office?
Dylan Gabriel going to be like second quarter, he's out there because Flacco just needs a minute in the blue tent?
Yeah, that feels likely.
And if it's Shedeur Sanders and he starts balling?
Then what?
Everything changes in a
whole
bat of an eye.
season.
Let's uncover what really happened behind closed doors, and why this bold move isn't just a gamble, it's a revolution. It started with a closed-door team meeting, one that was supposed to be routine. Players filed in, coaches took their spots, and the air felt tense. Then, head coach Kevin Stefanski stood up and said the words no one expected to hear. Rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders was officially the starter, effective immediately. Just like that, Joe Flacco, a former Super Bowl MVP and the presumed veteran leader, was out. No leaks, no hints, and no warning signs. Just one decision that flipped the entire team upside down. One team source called the meeting a shock bomb, not because Sanders hadn't earned respect in practice, but because nobody saw the Browns making this kind of move this early. Stefanski's announcement wasn't just about naming a starter. It felt surgical, direct, firm, and final. There was no open competition left to discuss and no walk-back planned.
He really hasn't done it. I mean, he hasn't gotten in any trouble. I mean, he hasn't been saying the wrong things. He hasn't been a less than a model citizen focused on, being the best that he can be. He hasn't done anything. So I think that when we look at it, he's going in there, he's working hard, he's trying to improve every day.
It was more than a football decision. It was a franchise-defining moment. Internally, players tried to process what just happened. Some looked around in disbelief. Others nodded in subtle agreement. Everyone knew Shedeur had been electric all camp, but elevating him over an experienced, playoff-tested vet weeks before the regular season? That wasn't typical Browns behavior. That was bold, almost reckless in the eyes of some. And yet, Stefanski stood his ground. He made it clear during the meeting this shift wasn't about contracts, reputations, or politics. It was purely performance-based. The coaching staff had spent weeks analyzing every snap, every stat, every moment in practice and preseason alike. And according to multiple insiders, Sanders simply dominated. One assistant coach reportedly put it bluntly, "We tried to justify a different outcome. We couldn't. He crushed every metric." Within the facility, buzz had been growing quietly as Sanders kept stacking highlight moments in camp. His throws were sharper, his reads were cleaner, his energy was unmistakable.
And he's working hard, he's trying to improve every day. He's saying all the right things, trying to elevate his level of play. And remember, up until this past weekend, we did think there was a legitimate argument that he should have been higher on the depth chart than Dylan Gabriel because he performed better against Carolina than Dylan Gabriel had performed in the preseason game against the Eagles. It's just that obviously he nosedived over this last weekend, so the tenor of the conversation changed. He really hasn't done it. I mean, he hasn't gotten in any trouble. I mean, he hasn't been saying the wrong things. He hasn't been a less than a model citizen focused on, being the best that he can be. He hasn't done anything. So I think that when we look at it, he's going in there, he's working hard, he's trying to improve every day.
And when he got reps with the first team, the entire pace of the offense changed. There was tempo, there was danger, there was belief. And Stefanski? He finally pulled the trigger. Behind the scenes, insiders say the coaching staff studied every option. They knew this would be controversial. They knew pushing a rookie into the spotlight could backfire. But they believed it was time to break the cycle, time to stop pretending experience always trumped present-day performance. But not everyone agreed, because less than 5 minutes after the announcement, Flacco was gone. He exited the meeting room without a word, skipped his scheduled media slot, and left the building altogether. The locker room was buzzing, and not in the good way. Whatever Stefanski thought would come next, it was about to get a lot more complicated. From the outside looking in, it might seem wild, Why would the Browns hand the keys of the franchise to an unproven rookie when they already had a Super Bowl champion in the building? Inside the facility, though, it was different. Very different. According to multiple team insiders, the answer came down to one simple truth.
Who will be the first quarterback game?
Shedeur. Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders didn't just play well during the quarterback competition, he dominated it. Quietly, systematically, and undeniably. Every internal metric had the same story. His completion percentage hovered just under 70%, a number rarely touched by veterans in full-speed preseason action. His third down efficiency rivaled elite names. And it wasn't just empty stats, it was about how he did it. Sanders operated like a veteran, but moved like the future. During practices, he made throws the coaching staff hadn't seen in years, off-platform darts, pre-snap identifications, post-snap reactions. One assistant coach reportedly said, "The defense didn't know whether to respect his arm or his brain more." Even veteran defenders were caught off guard. One Pro Bowl corner reportedly told a position coach he's throwing into windows that shouldn't exist. Ball placement like that? That's not normal for a rookie.
With outside type of things. But I'm committed to his development, just like all of our rookies. So we'll continue to focus on getting our guys better. And that's what we'll stay committed to, and that's what's important to me.
And maybe that was the point. Shedeur wasn't normal. His ceiling, Stefanski believed, couldn't be coached, it was innate. Throughout camp, Flacco had done everything expected from a vet. He was solid, steady, and professional. But while Flacco was consistent, Sanders was electric. And in every closed-door staff meeting, the divide became more obvious. As one source put it, "We kept trying to find reasons why we couldn't start him, and we just ran out of excuses." Still, it wasn't just about talent. Coaches started noticing something different in the huddle. Whenever Sanders stepped in, the tempo picked up. Receivers ran harder. Offensive linemen finished blocks. It wasn't effort, it was energy. Guys wanted to make plays for him. That's rare. What tipped the scales, reportedly, was how he handled pressure. During key situational scrimmages, red zone, 2-minute drills, third and long, Sanders operated with cold precision.
Going in there, he's working hard, he's trying to improve every day. He's saying all the right things, trying to elevate his level of play. And remember, up until this past weekend, we did think there was a legitimate argument that he should have been higher on the depth chart than Dillon Gabriel because he performed better against Carolina than Dillon Gabriel had performed in the preseason game against the Eagles. It's just that obviously he nosedived over this last weekend, so the tenor of the conversation changed.
In a red zone session that had the entire coaching staff watching closely, he converted 80% of his drives into touchdowns. Against the first-team defense, one coach supposedly turned to Stefanski and said, "This isn't potential, this is production, right now." So Stefanski made the call. He stepped away from the safe pick, turned his back on the established hierarchy, and instead, he placed the franchise squarely in the hands of a rookie named Sanders. It was risky, it was explosive, and it was already causing tremors behind the scenes. But for Stefanski and the Browns, it felt like the only choice that made football sense. Now, all that was left was dealing with the fallout. Flacco didn't say a word when the decision was announced. He didn't argue, didn't interrupt, he just stood up, walked out of the room, and vanished from the building. He skipped his scheduled media appearance, ignored teammates, didn't even return to his locker. According to one witness inside the facility, you could see it all over his face: disbelief, confusion, and something close to betrayal. And it wasn't just an overreaction. For Flacco, it felt personal. Because leading up to that meeting, all signs pointed to him starting at least for Week 1. Team sources say Flacco had multiple private conversations with coaches, suggesting his veteran presence gave him the edge while the rookie developed behind the scenes. Reportedly, he was told his leadership, experience, and ability to manage pressure would be invaluable during the early regular season stretch. He believed he'd been brought in to stabilize the offense, not be discarded when things got interesting. And when that belief was shattered, everything changed. Later that same day, Flacco reportedly requested a direct one-on-one meeting with Stefanski and key offensive staff. What was meant to be a calm conversation turned into a tense, pointed exchange. According to an insider present during the meeting, Flacco challenged the staff's evaluation process, questioning the criteria they used to make the call. He allegedly pointed out categories where his own preseason performance still led decision-making speed, turnover ratio, overall command. He raised concerns about the risks of throwing a rookie into the fire too soon, especially against complex Week 1 defenses. And he reminded them without ego that he'd done this before. He'd won on the biggest stage. Sanders hadn't taken a real snap yet. His message wasn't hostile, but it was direct. "You asked me to lead. Now you're cutting me off without reason." Sources inside the facility say Stefanski kept his calm. He explained the decision again, not as a personal slight, but as a shift in direction. The goal was to win now. And right now, all signs pointed to Sanders giving the team a better shot. Stefanski acknowledged Flacco's frustration, but stood firm. The decision was final. After that, everything got quiet. Too quiet. Quarterback's coach staff reportedly scrambled to soothe tensions, trying to keep the position room from unraveling. They began working overtime just to maintain communication between the quarterbacks, a relationship that was starting to fracture. Other veterans noticed too. Some players backed Sanders privately, but expressed disappointment in how the decision was handled. Messaging was inconsistent. Expectations felt broken. And suddenly, the Browns' quarterback room, meant to be a position of leadership, was full of uncertainty, silence, and subtle resentment. The coaching staff knew exactly what was happening. They hadn't just named a starter. They had disrupted the power structure of their own locker room. At every NFL level, quarterback decisions ripple. This one had become a tidal wave. And behind closed doors, some feared the storm was just beginning. As the mood darkened inside the Browns facility, a completely different storm was brewing outside, and this one came with fireworks. The fanbase didn't wait for a press conference. They didn't need an official rollout or some corporate highlight reel. The second news of Sanders' promotion leaked. Cleveland exploded. Within minutes, QB1 started trending nationally. Team stores began getting flooded with calls for custom jerseys, while fans outside the stadium started taking pictures holding signs that read, "The future is now." Downtown bars and sports lounges live-streamed the announcement like it was a playoff game. On social media, the reaction was overwhelming. One viral tweet racking up over 6 million impressions in less than 12 hours nailed the sentiment. "You don't draft the son just to leave him sitting on the bench. QB1 belongs, period." That energy swept through the entire Browns fanbase like wildfire. For a franchise known for quarterback chaos, this decision finally gave people something to believe in, not just a name, but a new identity. Something fresh, something explosive, something dangerous. Season ticket holders began flooding the front office with calls, many of them just to say, "Thank you." Jersey sales surged, sports talk exploded. And for the first time in what felt like decades, the Browns weren't being laughed at. They were being watched. But here's the twist. All of this public celebration only made things messier internally. Because while fans were popping champagne, the locker room was still picking up the pieces. Veteran players, especially those close to Flacco, felt like things had shifted way too suddenly. You had guys caught between two leaders. One who had earned their trust, and another who had suddenly taken his place. And then came the players-only meeting. Multiple offensive veterans, including captains, called it privately, intent on getting ahead of potential fractures. According to insiders, the meeting wasn't about choosing sides, it was about survival. Support the quarterback, stay the course, keep things in-house. They emphasized professionalism. They acknowledged Flacco's leadership, his resume, and his unfinished value. But they made one thing clear. Shedeur Sanders was the starter, period. And he deserved their protection. The team's leadership council reportedly walked out of that meeting with a unified media message: full support, total commitment, no distractions. But tension doesn't disappear with a speech. Even as coaches tried to smooth over relationships, you could feel the undercurrent. Sanders had momentum, fans were riding the high. But inside the building, trust had been tested and loyalties were being weighed. And as everyone celebrated this new era, one question lingered beneath the celebration. What happens if it doesn't work? Because the fire was lit, the crowd was roaring. But behind all that smoke, pressure was building. Shedeur Sanders may have earned the starting job on merit, but let's not pretend this was only about football. Because while Stefanski and the coaching staff insist the decision was based purely on performance, two powerful outside voices played undeniable roles in shaping the pressure cooker surrounding it all: Deion Sanders and Browns owner Jimmy Haslam. Let's start with Coach Prime. Throughout his son's rise through training camp, Deion was quiet publicly. No interviews, no soundbites, no flashy declarations. But according to multiple sources, he was anything but silent behind the scenes. Deion reportedly maintained regular private contact with Shedeur, coaching him from afar through the intensity of the competition mentally and emotionally. Insiders say call logs between the two spiked during the final weeks of practice. He offered tactical advice, kept his son focused, and reminded him that performing under pressure was the family business. But it didn't stop with fatherly advice. According to team insiders, Deion also spoke with Cleveland's front office multiple times during the preseason, thanking them for a fair process, but also subtly reminding them how rare this kind of talent was. After the quarterback decision was made, Deion released a public statement that looked cautious, humble, and calculated. Proud father, nothing given, everything earned. The staff showed integrity. My son showed readiness. Let's get to work. A classy quote, but the message was clear. This was always the goal. And then there's the ownership angle, where things get even trickier. Sources inside the organization claim that Jimmy Haslam, the Browns' owner, expressed clear excitement about Shedeur's potential very early on. While never formally directing Stefanski to start him, Haslam's conversations reportedly made two things obvious. Sanders brought national relevance. Sanders opened massive doors commercially. Merchandise sales, primetime exposure, endorsements, branding, marketing deals, all of it. For a franchise long trapped in small market mediocrity, Shedeur offered something almost impossible to buy: the chance to matter on Sundays every Sunday. Multiple sources confirmed that Stefanski and GM Andrew Berry were well aware of the economic implications, and though they insisted the call was purely football-based, that pressure didn't vanish. It hung over every practice, every meeting, every spreadsheet. One league executive put it this way: they knew if they didn't start Shedeur, people would wonder one thing: what more do you need to see? So yes, Sanders earned the job. But let's be honest, this decision wasn't made in a vacuum. It came with expectations, in-house tension, and outside forces that don't show up on a stat sheet. Coaching courage may have pushed the button, but family legacy and franchise desperation loaded the chamber. And once the trigger was pulled, there was no going back. The ink was dry, the headlines were out, the rookie had the job. But inside the Browns facility, coaches and staff weren't popping champagne, they were bracing for impact. Because as bold as this move was, it came strapped with every kind of risk imaginable: short-term volatility, long-term instability, and everything in between. Behind closed doors, the team quietly began planning for every possible outcome. Outcome 1. Sanders shines. This is the dream scenario. The rookie steps onto the field, silences every critic, and ignites a high-powered offense that shocks the league. If that happens, if Sanders backs up the hype with immediate production, the Browns become instant contenders. With a dynamic quarterback on a rookie contract, Cleveland could afford to stack the roster around him. Add weapons, reinforce the line, and chase a deep playoff run without touching the salary cap ceiling. In this version of the story, Stefanski looks like a visionary, the locker room rallies, and the franchise finally escapes its two-decade quarterback purgatory. But that's just one path. Outcome 2. Growing pains. The more likely scenario: the rookie shows flashes, but struggles with consistency. Defenses confuse him. Timing gets shaky. Turnovers creep in. Remember, Week 1 is against a Wade Phillips defense, renowned for overwhelming young quarterbacks with rotating looks and disguised coverages. It could be a trial by fire, the kind that leaves scars. And if Sanders stumbles early, the risk isn't just in the win-loss column, it's in the locker room. How long before the veterans, especially those loyal to Flacco, start grumbling behind closed doors? How long before the fan base starts flipping the energy from excitement to doubt? That kind of slow unraveling has happened before in Cleveland, multiple times. Outcome 3. Total collapse. And then there's the nightmare scenario. What if Sanders isn't ready at all? What if the turnovers pile up, confidence drops, and the team slides deeper into dysfunction? The coaching staff, especially Stefanski, would be the first targets. Because let's not forget, his future is now tied to Sanders' performance. He bypassed the safer veteran choice, ignored conventional timelines, and made the bold call. If it backfires, it could cost him his job. And that's not speculation, it's history. Browns coaches have been fired for far, far less. That's why Stefanski reportedly held a series of contingency meetings with his staff in late August. They laid out fallback plans for each quarterback scenario, including whether and when to bring Flacco back into the picture. Quiet conversations with other teams about Flacco's trade value have already been initiated, but nothing's final yet. Keeping him nearby? It's still considered insurance. Meanwhile, the coaching staff is emphasizing patience everywhere they go. Team sources say the phrase "development over drama" has become an unofficial rally cry. But patience is a luxury the NFL doesn't hand out often. And in Cleveland, it's downright rare. This wasn't just a quarterback decision. It was a line in the sand, a gamble with everything on the table: credibility, chemistry, careers. The Cleveland Browns didn't just choose Shedeur Sanders to start Week 1. They chose a future built on risk. For 2 decades, this franchise has failed to find stability at quarterback. 34 different starters since 1999. 34 attempts to solve the same riddle, some with hype, some with hope, most with heartbreak. And now, they're rolling the dice again. But this time, the rules feel different. Because Shedeur isn't just another rookie. He's the symbol of a philosophical revolution, a breaking of the status quo. No more clipboard watching, no more waiting your turn because someone else paid their dues. If you can ball, you play. Period. And that mindset, it terrifies the old guard. Veteran quarterbacks across the league see it for what it truly is, a signal that the landscape is shifting. High-upside rookies aren't waiting anymore. Patience isn't promised. Contracts don't guarantee security. Performance is the only currency that counts. That's what Stefanski is betting everything on, the belief that the best talent doesn't need time, it needs trust. But trust cuts both ways. If Sanders thrives, Stefanski becomes a genius, the front office becomes visionaries, and the city of Cleveland finally starts believing this team is more than just potential. The Browns transform from a cursed franchise to a terrifying wild card. But if it crashes? If Sanders falters, the offense sputters, and the locker room fractures, it all comes undone. The coach is questioned. The front office faces heat. A quarterback with sky-high promise becomes another cautionary tale. And worst of all, Cleveland becomes Cleveland again. Right back where they started, searching for what they thought they'd found. So now, the countdown begins. Week 1, Los Angeles Rams. Aggressive, disguised defenses. A battle-tested coordinator who's made a career out of confusing young quarterbacks. There's no runway, no warm-up, just pressure. Live in front of the world. The moment the ball is snapped, it's go time not just for Sanders, but for an entire organization daring to believe that sometimes the biggest wins only come when you risk the biggest losses. And that's what makes this story so compelling. It's not just about who starts under center. It's about what happens when you build your future on belief, not fear. Whether it succeeds or implodes, the NFL will remember this move because it didn't just change Cleveland's quarterback room. It may have just changed the timeline of modern football itself.